Hey everybody, I'm Dane Sanders, and I want to welcome you to Fast Track Coaching Ask Dane. This is episode, I think, 76, and we've done more than 76 now. We've done quite a few because at certain events we'll have more than one person on, and it's really becoming a bit of a part of my weekly rhythm every week, and I'm really enjoying the conversations that we've been getting in. And I hope you've been enjoying them too. We couldn't do this if it wasn't for the help of our friends over at ShootQ, who provide this free of charge for everybody, and allow me a lot of rain. They don't kind of ask me to only speak with certain people or anything like that. They've been pretty incredible, just allowing me to have conversations with my friends. And the feedback has been that it's been helpful for a lot of you guys. So I hope today is no exception. And I'm confident with our guests that won't be the case. Last week we had the privilege of having Jeremy Cowart on the show, and if you missed his show, I would encourage you to jump online and catch the replay. But over the course of the conversation, I had mentioned that Jesh was on the show today with me, and of course Jeremy and Jesh are good friends, and he wanted me to say hi. But we're very privileged to have my friend Jesh de Rox on, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him on screen. Hey Jesh, good to see you, my friend. The conversation today, for those of you who don't know, the way this works is basically Jesh and I get to have a dialogue, and you guys get to listen in, kind of like if we were having coffee somewhere. And I'm going to direct the conversation as best I can around what would be helpful for business and creativity, and kind of what we give so much of our life to. And as we engage the conversation, we don't just want it to be the two of us. We want to invite you into the conversation. So the way you do that is you can send us questions. There are already some questions lining up in the queue. To do that, you just click the little questions button, the little light bulb, and you type in your question in the text question area. Or you can go to the live video questions, which is always a brave place to go. I think it's really cool. The last couple weeks we had our friend Chris Dowsett jump on, and he's kind of our resident video guy, but I would love to see more of you guys jumping in there and getting in that conversation. But the other thing I just want to mention really quickly is we have 26 participants and 35 spectators on right now, and as the show goes along, of course, more people will jump in the conversation and watch or participate. But my real encouragement, if there's one lesson I want to suggest, or moral for all of us in this, is that we stop spectating in our businesses and in our lives and get into the game. And if that's a metaphor for you and you can jump into this one, I sure hope you will. But it's a quick conversation. We're only going to be here for a little over a half hour or so, and let's just jump right in. So Jesh, thanks again for being here. The topic, unfortunately for you, because I know you get this kind of thing all the time, is I got to choose a topic, and I suggested that we dialogue about connection. And what does connection mean? And unfortunately, because you're a great guy who likes to put your heart on your sleeve and share it and invite others to do the same, my guess is you get pigeonholed a lot for these kinds of conversations. And I just wanted to check in with you on that first. Does that sound like an interesting kind of...
Well, to tell you the truth, there's probably nothing that I love talking about more than life. And I mean, I think the only issue that I would just point out is that even words like connection, which can mean so much, if you say them 500 times, they start sounding like, something less than the deep root of what they are. And so I would say I want to have a conversation about connection that is very real and very practical and very having to do with things that are actually going to improve quality of people's life and also improve quality of people's business. And I was talking the other day with somebody about presence, and being present has kind of become like a catchphrase over these last few years, and it's really...
Hey Jesh, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
One thing that a lot of folks, I don't want you to lose your point of reference, but there's a lot of folks that are just mentioning they're having an easy time hearing me because I like to yell, and a hard time hearing you. So I don't know what the best strategy is.
Turn your volume down a little
Okay, so I should turn mine down?
Yeah.
Go here, and I turn my volume down here a little bit.
Yeah.
If you guys could give us some feedback in the chat room if this is helpful, we'll go ahead and do that. So Jesh, you're turned up to 100. Better? It is. You're a little bit.
Is this better?
Yeah, come down just a little bit from there.
Okay, here?
Yeah, that sounds good. Is that good, Sean? Can you hear me all right? Cool.
Hello?
All right, I think we're great now. So Ginger Murray says it's perfect, so that's good enough for me. So.
Aw, hi Ginger Murray.
I think we have dueling crushes on
like
Ginger,
Murray.
Jesh. I do too. So I cut you off. Please forgive me. You were talking about the importance of connection and these dialogues that you're getting in all the time with folks.
Okay, just to do a quick recap of what I was saying. I love talking about life, and I love talking about what really matters when it comes to life. And so connection has kind of become, you know, a buzzword for that, and that's wonderful and that's fine, but I just think it's important to remember if we just have to be careful of buzzwords and things like that, because we can build up so many ideas around them that we kind of forget to actually feel them, because ideas and feeling comes from a different place. So I could go on about that, but I'll just kind of say, yes, I would love to have a conversation about connection, and go on, dear Dane.
That's great. Hey, you know, it's funny. I didn't want to cut you off at all, but again, now it's funny. We have the opposite issue with the volume because now you're clipping on the high end. So if you can come in just a little bit again, that'd be great. And again, it's just so people are focusing on you. And apparently, if you go to the system preferences and raise it in that way, and then lower your flash setting volume, that's how you'll make it work best. So I'll just start talking while you're taking care of that. You know, it's funny. Why don't you say the alphabet for us for a second?
Which one? Because I can speak different languages.
Well, let's go with. That's nice.
A, B, C, D. Is that good?
French. Michelle Standifer wants you in French. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, Y.
Is that better? Yes?
I think it's better. I think you're good now, Tamara Kenyon says. So good. You know, so the comment about, you know, words and the importance of them, and yet it seems like every time I find a good word, they lose their value when everyone else thinks they're good words, and they end up meaning kind of everything and nothing at the same time. And I'm thinking about words like connection, or like support, like community. It seems like all of these words, I think, are inherently relational and can mean everything and nothing at the same time. So maybe let's start there. When you say the word connecting, can you talk a little bit about what you mean? And the reason I think it's relevant to this conversation is because I would like to take it down two roads. One road I'd like to take it down is just my ability as a creative person wanting to connect with my subject. And then if my subject has a connection with other things, for instance, if it's two individuals that I'm taking a picture of or whatever, and I'm interested in the relationship between them, I want to facilitate them connecting. But I guess if those are the general categories and lines of conversation, I'd love to go down if it works out. What do you mean by the word connection, and what do you try to accomplish when you're trying to connecting with someone?
Well, to put it simply, if you're not connecting with whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a conversation, whether you're playing baseball, whether you're watching the ocean, it's not going to be one of the best moments of your life. That's just put very simply. We shut off, we disconnect, we have walls up, all of those kind of things. We know what that feels like, and we also know rarely during any of those times is there a party going on inside of us. It's those are duller things, they're distant things. Think about what I would call the shining moments of your life, and in every single one there's some kind of a connection happening. So to me it's about life is really what's happening? Are you engaged? Is your hand on the steering wheel? Are your eyes looking at the person that you're talking to? Is there sparks flying between you of some kind? When we're talking about arts, we're talking about communication. And when we're talking about communication, there's a receiver, there's a sender, and those roles are constantly switching so that it becomes a cycle. And connection, I don't think should be some, grand achievement. Connection, we should just recognize if we're not connecting, we're not really even communicating, not on a deep level for sure.
Yeah, so I want to hear more about this, because there's a myth, I think, in the marketplace where if I say the right things, or I do the right stuff, or I click the right way, or I produce the right technique, that there should be a result that I'm looking for. But if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that that isn't necessarily the case. I could be doing all the right stuff, but if I'm not breaking through to someone, connecting with them, then it doesn't really, we might as well be doing nothing. Is that what you're alluding to? Or is that too strongly stated?
No, I don't think it's too strongly stated at all, because there's two different sides of life. There's two different sides of this experience that we're having right now, and one can be interpreted in purely mental, purely rational, purely measurable, and the other is on a feeling level, it's on an intangible level, it's on a non-measurable level. I mean, we could measure your face right now, we could do all sorts of scientific analysis on what your expression might mean in association with tests that have been done, and we could get pretty exhaustive into that, and yet even if we did all of that, it would not tell us entirely who you are, Dane. And it is an aspect of life, and I don't downplay it at all. The rational side is important, but I like to talk to people when I'm talking about connection in terms of something that every single person understands, and that is the love relationships that they already have existing. And these could be with a partner, they could be with children, they could be with best friends, and you have to realize the value that those people have to you has absolutely nothing, or at least a very small percentage, with the measurements that they have of their face, let's say. If your son's eyes, were an extra 3 millimeters in either direction, is that going to change who he is? Is that going to change the way that you feel about him? Absolutely not. And this gets more complicated when we start talking about something like photography. Because what is photography? Photography, or business, or whatever art form we're talking about, doesn't actually exist anywhere except for in our mind. It's a collection of thoughts and ideas. Photography is a collection of thoughts and ideas that have been pooled since photography was invented, and some guy came up with the word, or some lady, and said, we're going to call this photography. And from that time, there's been this collective term that has come up. And now when I say photography, all of these ideas flip into your head, and that's fine. I'm not putting that down, but I'm just very strongly pointing to the fact that's half of the story. So in my career, in my exploration of what photography has been, I wanted more than just those ideas. I wanted more than just the measurements, because I knew that when it came to the best moments of my life, measurements were rarely involved. Thinking about a time where I was walking on, this was about 5 years ago, it was one of the first times I got hired to go down to LA area, and I was on the Santa Monica Pier, walking on the beach late at night. There's a beautiful sunset. I just love the ocean. The ocean is just magic to me, and watching the waves come in and out, and the incredible colors as that sun gets low. I guarantee you I would not have been having a better experience if I knew the measurement of every single wave. If I was able to say, well, there's 373,000, waves that I can see right now, or the wind is coming in at a 13-degree northeastern. That's part of life. It's not the part that means something. And from the beginning, I wanted to do photography that meant something. I wanted to live in a way that means something. And we have to recognize The meaning does not come from the measurements. Measurements are important. They have their place, but that's not where the meaning comes from.
So now we're getting very complex, because you crossed over from the conversation about connecting to meaning. And as I've been thinking about the idea of meaning, like where does meaning start? Does meaning start with me? Like I make up meaning all the time. Like I make up things in my head about, like I'm a people pleaser, and I like you a lot, Jesh, and I would like you to like me. So I make up things in my head about what you think about me all the time. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I think that's pretty consistent with the human condition. Like I know a lot of folks who would admit that that's kind of their own reality. So I have this meaning that I make up about connecting. And then there's this other reality of whether or not I connect. Like, for example, let's say I'm taking a picture of you, and my hope is to really try to capture the essence of who you are. And I'm trying to connect with you to do that. But let's say I'm skewed in my belief on what I think is actually happening, and you have a totally different experience of what is going on. I'm wondering, maybe this question is too convoluted, but help me understand the relationship between connection and subjective meaning that gets made up, and is there even a possibility of objective meaning beyond just kind of what I make up in my head? Because sometimes I think I'm trying to break through to a client, or I'm trying to facilitate clients to connect, and I might be thinking that connection is happening, or making up in my mind that it's really going great, but in reality it's not, and things are falling short, or vice versa. And I'm trying to sort through, gosh, what are some ways that I can interrupt the meaning that I'm making about a certain situation and facilitate more authentic, genuine connection between either me and my subject, or my subject and themselves. Does that make sense, or is that too all over the place?
No, I'll answer my answer, and you tell me if the meaning you make up for my answer is weird. Okay? When we're talking about connection, we're talking about two different things that are separate for some reason, meeting. Okay, so that's this whole term that you've brought up, connection, is indicating that. So we have this sensor inside of us, and this sensor goes off when something real is happening. And that's a whole huge conversation, that we can't entirely get into. But when you're talking with somebody and it's a fake conversation or it's moving you, you can tell the difference. And when they are feeling that, you can also tell the difference in them. It's very similar to the ability that we have, and it's an innate ability in all of us, to be able to tell when somebody is a bad actor. I mean, there's very few people who enjoy watching bad actors on movies, and it's actually an uncomfortable feeling for us. And this is just the general mass of people feel that way, who don't necessarily specialize in this area. I believe each and every one of us have a sensor, an indicator inside of us that can tell when an authentic interaction is going on. And when that goes off, there's a joy that's released from that. And by joy, I don't always mean, giddy happiness. That's not what I mean by joy. But there's this a sense of energy exchange. And it's not really subjective in the sense that if you touch two ends of a live wire together after you've wet your fingers or whatever, it's not really subjective that you feel electricity. The electricity comes through you and you feel it. That said, a lot of people get so caught up in their mental dialogue, which, like I said, is half of life but is not all of life, that that sensor becomes buried under a lot of stuff. And this is an incredibly common phenomena within the human race. And that is something I hope we come back to a little bit later, because I want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, say that one more time. What do you want to talk about in particular? I'm missing that part.
Okay. I just didn't want to talk for 9 hours without you knowing that was the way that we were going or not. But if you give me a little more space here, I would say I don't believe that connection is something that's created. Okay, I believe connection, what we're talking about is connection, which we could go more into about whether or not that's the whole word for it, but for right now, let's say connection. I don't believe that's a state that is created as much as it is the pre-existent state. Okay, it's the pre-existent state. And connecting with somebody is not as much about building something between you two as it is about removing things that have built up between you two. Okay? And this is interesting on a lot of levels, but for one, when you look at a baby, like a newborn baby, aren't they often looking at you almost immediately as soon as they can, know they're looking at something from this very connective place? And if connection was something that we are building, and it takes this complex task of we've got to, memorize these 19, steps, and then we can do a connection. How the hell are babies doing that? Without even thinking about it. Very clearly, there is something there that is not about creating. And also, we've all met people in life that you just click with immediately. And you didn't come up with this big plan of, here's how I'm going to build this connection, and then you go and do it. And I talk about conversation a lot, because in conversation, we absolutely practice everything that makes art genius and everything that makes art, what we call art, non-effective. And it has everything to do with the degree of authenticity and connection that is happening in that conversation. But to just go back a little bit to something I said, sometimes you're speaking with somebody and it's this incredible conversation. And in the incredible conversations, think of one of the last incredible conversations you had. Did you sit out with a notepad before and hash out everything that you were going to talk about? Did you plan it? Did you measure it? Did you say, 3 minutes and 19 seconds into this conversation, I'm going to talk about this? It comes from a different place. So
it does. And
to just round all of that up into a nice little package, I would say connection, what we're talking about, connecting, this merging of two worlds, is not about building, it's about removing. There is a natural attraction, a moving closer, a flowing into that happens when what is in between two people is removed.
Well, there's a real resonance in that for me, because when I think about the world that I live in, it's a very distracted world. There's a lot of things pulling for my attention. I mean, even right now in this conversation, I'm torn between looking at the camera, so it gives the impression that I'm looking at you, because I'm actually imagining that the camera lens is your eyeball. And then I'm tempted to actually look at your face, because I can get a lot more information, so I look down and get a little bit more connection. And then I go, I'm vain, and I want to make sure that I'm looking at myself, that my hair is out of place, so I look over here. And then all of a sudden I'm realizing that there's all these other conversations, like this dialogue in the chat room, which is always very interesting, and ongoing questions of people who want to say something and connect, and then the internal staff chat over on the left, and my phone just rang a minute ago, and it's 4:23, so my wife should call any minute, because she calls every week during the show and forgets that I'm on the show. And given all of those distractions that are going on, I'm just really, there's a deep sense of, yeah, that's right, I want to remove pieces so that I can just genuinely connect with you. And what's a little bit of a artificial connection in this dialogue is obviously we're talking through a bunch of wires over a lot of space, and contrasting this with us sitting in that hotel lobby up in Edmonton and chatting, deep into the night. That felt very different and far more meaningful to me, just by proximity. And it seems like in all of these things, given distractions and wanting to remove rather than create or build, it seems like having a capacity and a confidence to be present and just breathe and just kind of be here, it seems like the primary task. Like when I'm feeling the pressures of wanting to, am I going to pay the bills this month? Is anyone going to care about this new thing that I announced? Or are people going to say nice things or mean things about me on Twitter? Those things are also distractions from my capacity to be present in the moment. And I'm wondering if there are some, first of all, if if presence really does play a role, and then how does one practice being kind of centered and cored down to who I am for the sake of connecting with somebody else? Can you comment a little bit about on that?
Yes, yes. Okay, first I just want to talk about this phrase that you said, being present and presence. I mentioned this in the very beginning, but some people couldn't hear what I was saying, and I don't know if you heard me, so I just want to reiterate this again. Let's not turn that into a catchphrase, present and being present. It means something, and it's really important to go right down to the core of what it means. And it's not some mystical, far off, fairyland type of idea, oh, I'll be present, or monks are present, or, enlightened people are present. No. Every single person on earth is present during certain parts of their experience of life. You know how I know that? Because every single person experiences joy at some point. Joy only comes from presence, okay? It only comes from presence. And joy is that deep, fulfilling sense. Joy is the thrill it is to be alive, okay? And let's just talk purely mathematically here. Purely mathematically. Let's take this out of the fairyland realm and into just logistical, rational thinking. Let's go back to one of those great conversations that you had. Was it the greatest conversation you had within the first 15 seconds? Probably not. Probably the great conversations, they last, at least a minute, and, often longer than that. Often, great conversations are great, and you know that they're great. One of the indicators of this is that you forget what time it is and you get lost. That feeling of losing track of time is very much this experience of presence. And mathematically, here's what I want to say about this. If in 10 minutes of talking to somebody, one of those minutes you were paying attention, one of those minutes you were thinking about your phone, one of those minutes you were thinking about, the next thing you're going to do, or the next thing, or the next thing, or the next thing. It just boils down to a smaller percentage of the time that you're actually with that person, okay, or with that conversation. So it's a mathematical thing, and I use 10 minutes, but we can even break that down to 10 seconds. And we could probably even break it down to like 1 second, because our mind is firing so crazy fast. So to answer your question, this whole thing of what does it mean to be present, it has to do with learning how to sustain. And it has to do with learning how to walk and walk and walk and take step and step and step until you've taken enough steps that you reach the destination. And what happens with a lot of people, and why there is not as much connection, not as much joy as there could be, is because we take one of the steps, and then we take 19 other steps in 19 other directions, one other step, 19 others, and so it becomes a very diluted experience of conversation. It becomes a very diluted experience of life, to put it at the very barest level. There is an incredible amount of people living that are living a kind of diluted life. And I know this because it happens to me every single day. I catch myself in, dilution, which ends up being a diluted form of living in quite a lot of ways.
That makes a lot of sense. So I want this to be a live conversation that isn't just canned, and we have a lot of questions in the queue where people want to get involved, which I appreciate. But I want to take a risk with you, Jesh. We're friends, and we've had some great conversations, and I'm hopeful for a lifetime more. And I know a lot of folks who are watching and participating feel the same way about you. But I want to invite some feedback from you. And this is the kind of thing, it's funny for you guys who are listening, before this show started, Jesh and I were offline talking, and we have scheduled a time to talk later about some stuff, challenges that I'm in the middle of and different things like that. And I said, yeah, let's wait till we're offline to talk about that. And there's a degree of appropriateness for disclosing what, where, and all that sort of thing. But I just want to invite you, Jesh, is there anything that you see around this idea of constancy? So this non-mystical sense of connection or presence, feedback that you would want to give to a friend like me about what you're kind of witnessing from a distance. Is there anything that you see where you go, or maybe a more generic question would be, when you see someone who seems disconnected with themselves or overly distracted or too many obstacles between them and who they say they want to connect with, can you see that straight away in the same way that you could see like the bad actor that you described at the beginning? And if so, I'm curious what you see in a friend like me, and just open the door to have you comment as you see fit. I'm really curious if you have any feedback for me.
Well, first of all, there has to be an important distinction made between judgment and my experience of things. So to make it very clear, I do my absolute best not to judge anybody. And what is a judgment? A judgment is when you cut somebody off from their real existence and you put them in a box, and you put the box away, you file it away into their head, okay? And there are certain aspects of judgment that can be helpful and beneficial, but I say that judgment is like a sharp knife. There are some uses that a sharp knife has. That's absolutely true. But when it comes to life, there's quite a few uses for a sharp knife compared to the vast majority of other things. And rarely is a sharp knife going to be involved with something that is going to be an incredible shining moment of your life. Okay, so that said, anything that I say is not from a place of judgment. It's a place of my experience and observation. So because I have worked and practiced on honing in on this, I have a very practiced skill at being able to tell whether or not somebody is engaged at and at what level they're engaged in this conversation that we're having, in this communication that we're having. And I have practiced a lot of things that draw that in closer. Okay, so in a person who is not completely there with you, there will be these thoughts that are kind of trickling around, and these thoughts, the internal eye is kind of going like this, looking around at all of these things. And even though somebody can practice to have their eyes looking at you, there will be this slight glaze over effect. And there's this old expression called light in the eyes, and it's there is something to that. It's probably not literal. It's probably not a literal light, but it's a similar thing as what we can see in babies. You know, sometimes people describe babies as having this wisdom. It looks like they have ancient eyes or wise eyes. What it is this internal light that comes out when you are looking at what you are looking at. Instead of looking like you're looking at something, having your eyes pointed in a certain direction, and in actual reality, the internal eye, which is where your outer eyes are feeding information into, is actually pointed in perhaps 20 other places at one time. So I think to answer your question, can I notice that? Absolutely, I can notice that in somebody. As far as what does a person do to get to a place where they're not as distracted, I would say the same way that you would build up to lifting like 100 pounds of weight. You certainly don't start off with 100 pound weight, you know. Give yourself a goal that, you know, you think is doable, and if for you that would be 10 seconds of just experiencing one thing, then just do 10 seconds until you can do more. Just build it up in reps, I would say. But I would add on to that, that the skill of being able to be completely in one place at one time, I cannot tell you the value of that. I simply cannot tell you the value of it, because it's like in an electric signal, or perhaps in this day and age, a wireless signal is going to be more understood by most people. I think how many bars are on the iPhone is a lot more common language than, you know, ohms or anything like that, or wattage these days. But when there is stuff, when there's interference, it's like going into that mall or going into that store where there's metal rafters, and all of a sudden the signal gets cut off, and so the iPhone bars start dropping down. You know, your signal starts dropping down. Very similar in between two people. And can you still have connection? Yes, you can, but it's a low-level connection.
So let's get to some of the questions, because there's a lot of folks, you're sparking a lot of internal dialogue that they want to make external. So let's jump into them.
Okay, let's do it.
My friend Shannon, what's that?
I said I could talk about this like infinite. So keep going.
All right. Well, my friend Shannon Perlow from Dayton, Ohio, asked the question: how do we help remove the junk so we can have authenticity? How do we remove the junk so we can have authenticity?
That's a very good that's very good. The best way to remove. I was going to make a joke, but I won't. The best way to remove the joke is to begin to develop an awareness for what is junk, what is not junk. You got to start there, because that single issue is so confused in most of our minds. A lot of the time, we will waste precious moments of our life thinking about something that has absolutely no value to us. And not just once, we will get obsessed with things like that. We'll fire them again and again and again. And the brain is a magnificent machine, far more beautiful, powerful, intricate than anything we've even come close to dreaming up. And the more and more that you practice something, you get better and better at it. The more you fire those kind of signals, they become second nature to us. And the unfortunate thing in a lot of our lives is that this second nature we have built up is more based around things that are junk. And when I say junk, what I mean is they do not belong to what is valuable to us. They do not belong to what is valuable to other people.
So what is some junk in your trunk that you find yourself obsessing about?
I think one of the biggest things that I have a challenge with is seeing work that really inspires me, because I'll see work that is just so gorgeous and so beautiful, and there's some really amazing fashion photographers and commercial photographers whose work I just love, and I look at that, and my mind will come up, and I'll hear my mind saying things like, yeah, your work doesn't look like that, Jesh, and you got to be careful, because your work should be looking like this and like this, and I hear judgments like that. But that's probably one of the most common things that will happen to me in that form. And what I've noticed about that is when that kind of dialogue comes up, that's rarely something for me to get excited about, And so it'll usually trigger a more discouraging feeling, and I'll feel like and at the end of the day, it goes back to value. Who is valued in the world by me going, this is so sad, I don't have this work that looks like, so and so's, and what does that mean? And nobody is valued there, and it's quite a sad thing when we let ourselves get stuck in that place, because here we are, this machine that has this capacity for incredible amount of value, and we're absolutely have no chance of giving it to ourselves or anybody else as long as we're in those junk kind of thoughts. So that's one thing that I have noticed in myself sometimes.
Great. Let me jump back here to some more questions so we can get through them, because believe it or not, we've already crashed our time, but I want to make sure we get a lot of these.
No.
But I'm gonna keep going if you're cool with it.
Yeah.
And if you guys are listening or okay with it, you can go ahead and say so or not. This is another Canadian. Do you know Chris Dowsett at all?
Are you talking to me?
I am. Do you know who that is?
I very well may. I don't remember names.
Well, let's bring Chris on right now. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Just 1 second. He should show up here on the screen in a second. How's it going?
Hey.
So, Chris, you're traveling on the road, it looks like, with another outfit. By the way, this is 3 weeks in a row. I'm pretty impressed.
I'm doing good. I'm worried about the lag in between our speech here.
It's part of the territory, no problem. So go ahead and ask your question.
So I'm just going to start talking. Hopefully it works out between of all of us here. My question directly kind of relates to the connection to self, because I actually just got out of school for photography. I went to school in Victoria, British Columbia, and a lot of the people that I found had the least genuine ability to become photographers were the people that weren't connected to who they really are. And one of my biggest not problems, I suppose, but challenges in taking on the life of being a professional creative is tackling the things that you know are upstairs before talking to, and trying to build relationships to clients or to other photographers or anyone in general. And I'm just wondering, do you think that where's your time better invested? Is it better invested really searching down deep and finding your niche that you love and finding out what you actually love and then applying that? Or do you think you should mix it in with doing the things you're not as connected with, or having the conversations that you know that you're not as connected with? Or like in general, like where should you direct the most amount of your energy?
Yeah, so if I'm hearing your question right, Chris, you're saying, should it be focused on connecting with self or connecting with others, or is one primary? What do you think, Jesh? How would you respond to that?
I would say you'd be best benefited by investing most of your time on askdane.com. I think that'd probably be the best. But secondary, besides that, that's for you, buddy. Besides that,
thanks, man.
I would say this. Any moment which you are engaging in inauthentic communication is an absolute waste of your time. Inauthentic communication in any form is a waste of your time. And why do I say that? Because it does not connect to growth. It does not benefit you. It does not benefit anyone else. Have you ever walked away from a fake conversation feeling deeply fulfilled? No, you have not. Have you ever walked away from an interaction where you know that you didn't say what you really needed to say and felt an exhilarating feeling in your heart? No, you did not. So I would say the best thing that you can do right now is in every single interaction that you have, photography or unphotography related, because it doesn't matter. It's about life. Begin to practice being authentic, okay? And it is a practice because we have learned so well from the time we have been babies how to not be authentic. We are really frickin' good at not being authentic. And with some people in some situations, you will find it both easier and more enjoyable to be authentic with them. Watch these situations very carefully and take notes after the conversation to see if you can figure out why. In other conversations, you will find it very difficult to be genuine. You will find it very difficult, and those will rarely be enjoyable conversations. And if you really start to note this, then I would even recommend taking around a notepad or on your iPhone or whatever, and after each interaction, just do a little bit of a tally of what happened. On a scale of 1 to 10, how enjoyable was it for you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how real do you think you could be with them? How real were they with you? And what you will very likely find, as I certainly found, is that the degree of authenticity is very tied into the degree of value that ends up coming out with that. So to answer one subsection of your question there, one more, would be the connection to self. That's huge. I could talk for literally days just on the connection of self, and I do. But connection to self is the most important of all connections. And the reason for that is when you establish one great connection with Dane, and let's say it takes you 10 hours to do that, but you finally do. You've got a great connection going with Dane. Is that valuable? Definitely it's valuable. You've got a great connection going with Dane. But that great connection with Dane doesn't necessarily serve you when you're talking with Sarah over here. However, if you spend 10 hours improving your own connection with yourself, is that going to improve your potential to connect with Dane? Absolutely. Will it also enable you to connect better with Sarah? Absolutely. Will it enable you to connect better with anyone? Absolutely. So the single most efficient place you can invest your energy is yourself. And that is one of the most rampant problems that we have as humans living on this earth, is we are throwing away crazy amounts of our energy, of our life source, into things that cannot pay back. And it breaks my heart, because here we are, our own energy source. We are responsible for our own nourishment. We are the one who has to feed ourselves, because no one else can reach that place in us, okay, ultimately. And people who do feed us from that place, we've got to let them. Okay, so it still comes down to us. And we instead choose to fill this moment with something where we're going, yeah, that's great. Oh, really? Did Jane really say that? How incredible. Yeah. And we walk away from that conversation no better than we were before. And you know what? This is life. How sad is it that we spend so much of it in things that we walk away from no better? That's not movement. That's not going forward. I take it as a personal challenge, and I challenge every single one of you. Can we up the amount of moments in our life where movement is happening, where we're feeling moved, where they're feeling moved? Can we up that? Because even if we just up it by a tiny percentage, that ends up being exponential and touching and growing so much.
Well, let's. I'm looking forward to the extended conversation of this for personal, selfish reasons, but it seems important that we address the question that Jamie Bermudez asked. How do you translate all of the connections with others and with self into photography or these kinds of mediums that we're engaging? And I'll just let the question stand for itself.
Okay. I am a little bit of an odd case when it comes to photography because I didn't learn how to do photography, the normal way, the proper way, whatever. And so I ended up finding my own way in that, okay? And for me, that was an advantage because I was able to put to the test and put to the measure, okay, this is what so-and-so of such and such a degree of such and such a level of income a year says is photography, but does that mean anything to me? And I think tying back into what we talked about in the beginning, a lot of times, we will be there on the ocean, and we will have this conversation come up in our head about how so-and-so, one, famous ocean watcher once told us that, there's such and such amount of waves and that they're this high. And when we're thinking when we're in that place, we are not soaking up the beauty of what that ocean actually is. And we do the same kind of thing in photography, okay? We will be there in front of these two brilliant, beautiful people, or one person, or an ocean, whatever it is we're photographing, and instead of seeing the ocean, instead of seeing the people, instead of looking at them, instead of experiencing them, all of this stuff, this information will start floating into our heads of what angle should I shoot from? What did so-and-so famous photographer say would be the best lens to use? And it's not that that's wrong, okay? That has its place and it has its application. But we have to realize that is only half of what's happening here. So to answer your question very directly, Jamie, I don't see a differentiation between photography and life. I simply don't. My life is always happening, at least hopefully it's always happening, okay? And while I'm doing photography is an expression of my life in that moment. And that's always true for all of us. It's just that a lot of times our life, which potentially could be a beautiful, flowing, incredible interaction, inspiring, moving, is this bored or scared or disconnected or fearful or worried kind of a thing. And when we are photographing and our life happens to be worried, fearful, etc., 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 our photography becomes that. So I just want to give you this little visual to think about. Photography, like any art form, is an art form. Okay, it's a form. So by itself, it's nothing. There has to be an energy powering that form to make it meaningful. The energy that powers all art forms is your life. So if your life isn't powering the form of photography, it doesn't even really matter. Okay, so translating that connection into photography, be the same person that you are when you're having a great conversation. Be the same person you are when you're having a great conversation. Be that when you're photographing. And what you will find is, just like from a young age we all learn how to do this fake smile, we learn to be photographer. And we have all these ideas about what photographer is. And that's dangerous for us, because when we go into that certain mode, it's basing it off of all these ideas we have of what a photographer should be. And the issue with that is they may or may not be relevant to what's happening in the situation now. And you can see even by my face when I do that, it's not my best look, okay? And there's a lot of photographers out there
pretty good, though.
who aren't... I don't think so. They're not giving their best look when they're with their clients because it's this amalgamation of mostly fear-based, right? Because why do we do this weird face? Because we get afraid, we get uncomfortable. We do this invisible, which makes it more dangerous, kind of a face, a role that we start playing as photographer, and that can disconnect us from the deeper half of life.
Okay, so let's talk just for a minute about these fears that you're describing, because whether, I know for me in my own life, a lot of the obstacles that I create for my life are based in fear. So you say, be self, be the same in different contexts, pay attention to the good conversations and extend that conversation regardless of the form that I'm in. And I want to engage those things. But yet sometimes these fears are just overwhelming, and very practically, like fears of, am I going to pay the bills this month? Fears of my loved one who's sick or dying, what will that mean for my life? If I'm grieving in one context, should I bring that presence to my work when my clients aren't paying to be around a grieving photographer? Is there reasonable space for setting boundaries around disclosing what your kind of unauthentic self? Because I think sometimes folks,
yes,
when they hear this, they're thinking you're saying, gosh, that means I should just be this existential, could be crises, but this existentialist everywhere I go all the time without kind of any filter or edit. And I don't think you're recommending that, correct?
That's a really good point to bring up, Dane. And I think to illustrate that, let me ask you something. Do you know who Cate Blanchett is?
I know who she is, yep.
Okay. She's one of my favorite actors. I'm crazy about her ability as an actor, okay? When she is playing Queen
By the way,
Elizabeth,
nice use of putting the frame actor on what is traditionally called an actress. I'm very impressed that you did that. But go ahead, keep going.
Thank you.
She's playing Queen Elizabeth.
She's playing Queen Elizabeth, thank you. Is she being authentic?
Yeah, she couldn't be compelling if she wasn't.
Exactly. She could not be compelling, she could not be moving, she could not be inspiring unless she was being authentic. And yet, she's playing somebody who died hundreds of years ago. She definitely is not physically that lady. So how can she possibly be authentic and communicative and connective? The truth is, authenticity has nothing to do with the details of your life. Nothing. Okay? We live through the details of our life, and a lot of times we mistake the details of our life for our life. They are not our life. They are forms. The details of our life are not our life. And just like I was saying a little bit earlier to answer, I think, Jamie's question, there's this two parts of us. There's this energy and there's this form, okay? And the form is meaningless without the energy, but without the form, the energy has no ability to relate with anything else. So they're both vital halves of what happens, okay? But we make these forms, and let's say my form is, I'm really worried about what's going to happen to me next month. The only way that form becomes meaningful is when I pour in the energy of my life into that form. And it's just like, imagine that thoughts are like water balloons, okay? Very thin. What's a very thin balloon? And by itself, it weighs almost nothing. It's negligible. But you pour in the energy of your life into that water balloon, and what happens? It gets huge and heavy and thick, and we look at it and say, oh my God, this thing is ginormous, it's heavy, it's dangerous, this could splash on somebody. That's our own frickin' energy that's powering that thing, okay? So we can withdraw the energy from that, and it shrinks back down. And one of the things I say is fear is a thick wall made of nothing. Fear is a thick wall made of nothing, okay? And it's the same water balloon effect. It looks ginormous because we power so much of our energy into it that it becomes ginormous. But in actual fact, it's the thinnest of things because it's made of a thought. I posted something the other day on Facebook, which is one of the musings that I was having at the time, which is any problem that would cease to exist if you cease to exist is within your ability to solve, okay? And what I meant by that is this.
Say it one more time.
We all walk around Any problem that would cease to exist if you ceased to exist is within your ability to solve. Okay? And here's what I mean by that. If most people on Earth are walking around right now, and if I came up to them, I said, what are the problems in your life? And if they trusted me, they could easily mention 12, 15, 100 problems that they have that are very serious problems, at least to them. Okay? Except, let's say something tragic happens and they pass away. How many of those things still have relevance if they've passed away? Probably not very many of them, okay? If any. And so what that very clearly points to is that a lot of these huge things we see as these gigantic issues, these gigantic problems, they're perspective things, they're form things. And do they have some kind of relational value? Absolutely they do, but on the deepest sense, they are not things of themselves. They are things that we are making them into be. And we can see how that as we grow up and we have a different perspective, we can look back at a 12-year-old girl, who nobody came to her birthday party and she was absolutely crushed by that. Or, you're a 14-year-old boy and the girl that you asked out on a date, Jenny said no and, Sir checked no in the no box or whatever. We can see how it's kind of funny to be ridiculously crushed about that. The same thing is true of us now. And we know this is true because we've all looked back at times that were hellish for us, 10 years ago, and we can laugh and smile about it now. Why is that? Because we are not attached to that perspective. So the danger here, the challenge here, is can you recognize how attached you personally are to the issues, to the forms that you have? And once you can detach from them, not saying, to ignore them because they need to be dealt with, but can you not throw your life into them? Can you recognize there are things in front of you that you have the ability to move around and play around with? Can I share one more thing or
Yeah, you can. Oh, we're way over, so.
Okay, we're going for it. Have you heard of the game Tetris?
I have, yes.
Tetris. Okay. Tetris is a brilliant.
And for those who are listening, Tetris, let's explain it really quickly. Tetris is that game where the blocks are falling down and you're trying to get even balance, and then when a full bar is covered, it disappears, and you're trying to never overflow the cup. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Tetris is one of the most popular games of all time, actually. It's broken tons of records, and it's an incredibly simple game, but I want to tell you why I think it's one of the most popular ones. Because on a certain level, it is so relative of the life experience, okay? When the block comes down, do you get to pick what shape block you get?
Nope.
No, you do not,
no.
Okay? You do not pick the shapes that come into your life very often. But do you have some kind of an ability with it? Yes, you do.
Sure.
You have the ability to turn it around and choose what place in your landscape you're going to put it. And here's an example of what happens when we get too attached to these forms and shapes, okay? We make it a personal issue. And you know what? The game of Tetris is not personally trying to screw you over. It is not trying to get you upset. It's a system, it's a game. So we get a block that's just about to come down and we're thinking, give me the line, I need the line, baby, give me the line. And instead of the line, that stupid little squiggly one comes, and we're like, the squiggly one. I always get the squiggly one. It's ridiculous. I can't believe I got the squiggly one again. This is ridiculous. I hate this game. And all the time that we're bitching about that, what's happening?
Yeah, it's falling.
It's getting closer and closer to the time where we can do nothing about it anymore, okay? So, life is so much like Tetris. We cannot choose the blocks that we get, but we have an incredible amount of degree about how to deal with the blocks once we get them. And master Tetris players, just like master life players, waste no time bitching about the blocks that they get. They immediately say, this is what I got. They look at their landscape and they say, you know what? I'll put that here. I'll put that here. I'll put that here. And sooner or later, you get the line. The line comes. And you get that line, you put it right in the place, and Tetris.
Yeah, I'm in the chat room right now writing frick, frick, frick. because I can't bitch on screen, so I'm gonna have to do it in the chat room about it. So that's profound, my friend. Yeah, this is a rare moment of being silenced, because I mean it's just really touching my own heart and my own life, and feeling like so much of the pieces of the Tetris board coming down are totally overwhelming me. And I'm...
Dane?
Yeah.
When your boy looks at you, doesn't see those problems, does he?
No.
What does he see, do you think, when he looks at you? When he's in a good mood.
Well, it's funny. It's profound, again, that you said what you're saying, because just this morning and last night he came to my... I was on the computer doing something, like I often am, and he made the request because I had photoshopped a picture of our puppy and put it on a surfboard with my daughter, and he's like, hey, can you do that for me with some picture of me and the dog? And I said, sure. And he knew I'd been overwhelmed, because I don't tend to hide these things as well as I'd prefer with my kids. And he picked up on it, clearly, but he wrote me an email this morning. And yeah, just said that he cares a lot about me, and there was something in what he was communicating. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's just something in his very undeveloped, raw capacities to pick up and also to connect with me, just by saying, what he said in the email was, I know you're working really hard. I'm sorry I asked for so much. And I was just really moved. I don't have anything else to say.
What your family and what your friends, and the people who love you see when they see you, that's the only real part. And that's the only real part. When a baby, who's 2 or 3 months old, just looking at you with these big, beautiful eyes, they're seeing the realest part of you, because they're seeing the energy of you, the life of you, completely before it's invested in any forms. And what causes the so much of our pains and so much of so many of the challenges that we face is we throw so much of this energy of who we really are into these things that they become gigantic and they become so real to us. But the crazy thing is, these other people who are very real and very in our life, look up at us, and they don't even exist for those people, And there's something in that. There's something to remember, because if somebody can look at you with those kind of eyes and see that, then it's there to be seen. And I think going back to something I think that Chris said earlier, this connection with self is the chief of all of them, because the way that we look at ourselves has so much impact on all of the other people in our life, so much impact on the stuff that we do. And I mean, if I can talk about something that Jesus said, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, I whether or not you're a religious person, the stories that are told about Jesus from simply an artistic view are stunningly powerful to me. And one of my favorite stories is when he is in this crowd, and this woman is about to be stoned to death, for being a harlot, and for committing adultery or whatever. And there's all these people around, you know, ready to throw stones, and it's an angry group. And every single one of those people in that angry mob, they look at that person and they see somebody worth destroying. They see somebody not only worth destroying, somebody who deserves to be destroyed. And Jesus looks at the very same person that they were all looking at and saw something completely different, okay? And this, how we see things, is so tied in to what makes our life beautiful or what makes our life a living nightmare, okay? Going back to Tetris, the squiggly block comes down, and we have the ability to choose to see that block as the adulterer, as the harlot, as the awful thing that deserves destruction. And when we do, we pick up our stones, we get angry, and we get ready to do some damage, okay? It's not to our advantage to do that. And wisdom comes in the form of the beautiful loving thing that Jesus did, you know? And saw that person deeper, you know? And made something so gorgeous of that situation that ended up, you know, throwing in that transforming energy of love. And that's my favorite thing about love, and that's why I'm so wild about love. Again, I don't talk about love as some airy-fairy thing out there. It's a very real energy, and it's the energy of transformation. When love is invested in something, growth happens, movement happens. I love how trees are this transformation of dirt and sunlight. That's what a tree is made of, you know? All this elemental earth and sunlight, and this water comes in, you know, and it transforms this dirt and this sunlight into something new. And that's what love does. And I'm crazy about love for that reason. But most people do not recognize, in my experience, most people do not recognize the sheer power that the way they see things has. Because simply based on the way that you're looking at something, it will either be very clearly something worth destroying or very clearly something worth forgiving, something worth loving. And the actions that flow out of that are enormous. And too often, we worry about the actions. We worry about the actions when it's not the actions that matter, it's the vision, because vision defines actions. We'll be in the situation of that, in that crowd with the stone and wants to stone, and we'll look at the action, we'll say, no, there's clear evidence here that this deserves to be stoned, that this deserves to be destroyed. There's clear evidence that this is crummy. And going back to a personal perspective, if you give your fears and worries the time of day, if you measure them, I guarantee you, you will find them worth worrying about, okay? You will be that person there with a stone. You will be upset, okay? You have to change the way that you're looking about it. Let's go back to the Tetris game. That squiggly line will not fit in that line that you've prepared for the 4-line thing. It won't fit there. And you can keep bitching about that as it comes down. It still won't fit. It still won't fit. I should have got the line. I should have got the line. You didn't. You didn't get the line yet. So your choice is, how am I going to see this? Am I going to see this as the thing that shouldn't be, and it's all of these things and it's not? Or am I going to see this as, in about 7 or 8 moves, that's going to be right a part of the block that when the line comes down, all disappears? You know, and that's why I think Jesus was so incredible, because of the way that he saw. He developed his vision to such an extraordinary degree that he looked at something everyone else thought was worth destroying, and he said, wow. Oh my God.
So when you say vision, that's really striking. Most of my life, when I've thought of vision, I've thought of it primarily as something of, I need to go have an imaginative, creative experience, and then I'm going to try to articulate that through whatever medium I use. But you're just actually just saying what I actually see.
I'm saying one of the hardest things in the world to see well is yourself. And the reason for that is we're so close to it, we're so attached to it. And I mean, even our eyes are pointed in the opposite direction of ourselves. You know, so when I'm talking about developing your vision, I'm talking about really getting an awareness of, how is it that I'm seeing things? How is it that I'm responding to things? When somebody says this to me, what is happening there? And I have worked really hard over the past 5 years, especially, to develop that awareness. And I'm telling you, that inner vision is to call it important, to call it valuable, doesn't even begin, because the difference of having that inner vision or not ends up being the difference of you being there as a part of the crowd that's stoning, or you being the one there in that crowd who disperses this awful thing that was about to happen and makes something beautiful where everybody goes home and has something to think about. I mean, that's not a small thing. And he illustrated stuff like that time and time again. And it's the vision, it's developing that inner vision, which has to do with this authentic relationship with yourself. And how do you do that? You start paying more and more attention to that feeling that we all have, you know, that homing signal, that signal that says, this is real, there's joy in this, there's life in this.
Well, this is, I think, officially the longest Ask Dane we've done. So we probably should put a pause to it. And even selfishly, I might do it just so that we can get into a conversation extended, because it's overdue. But for those of you who are watching and participating, I want to thank you guys. Tons of very affirming comments. This was a very special time, man. So I really appreciate your invitation to really, for me, to be present here. And I know for a lot of folks, given the comments, it seems like it's been helpful for them exactly where they're at to do the same. So thank you, man, for being on the show today. I'd like to have you back again if you're open to it.
Absolutely, anytime. It's my
Cool.
honor to share this time with you guys.
Cool. Well, we'll sign off for now. For those of you who don't know, both of our friends, actually, John Michael Cooper, will be on the show. I think he's next week, or I might be mixing things up. No, I'm sorry. Next week, I think it'll be Kevin Kubota. He doesn't know that yet, but we're going to be in the same place at the same time. So hopefully we'll get him on the show. And this recording will be up shortly, so we'll get this online as quick as we can, because I know there's a lot of folks who wanted to watch it later. And if you don't know, I did have a chance to release my roadshow new dates for the next year and a half that came out today, and would really, especially if you went to the roadshow in the past and you found it valuable, I would really ask that you guys let other folks know that and be an invitation on our behalf. There's selling points on why I think it's a cool thing that is happening, but really the only reason it's valuable is if folks who've participated in the past see it so and end up sharing that with other people. Especially in this time and age, I get why people are careful with how they spend their money, but I really am hopeful that the right people are in the rooms where we land, and that this idea of connection continues on a deeper level, because I think even just the benefits of what this is for me on a personal level, or Jesh, or even in our friendship, or you guys participating, imagine if this was a culture of connectivity, of presence, of, you know, whatever buzzword you want to pick, of seeing people for who they actually are or could be, how that would affect the various forms that we engage with. It would be amazing. And I know for me, Jesh, I'm just grateful for leaders like you, just people like you who are willing to lead in the face of some skeptical folks. I know that there are people that don't necessarily, they're actually antagonistic towards some of the things that you're encouraging in others, which is astonishing to me. But I just want to, on behalf of a lot of folks, just thank you for being you and for inviting us into this kind of reality more and more often. So thanks, man. All right, man. So we'll sign off on the event now. If this is valuable for you guys, please say hello online and let other folks know so we can continue these conversations in the future. And be sure to check in with Jesh. He's got a lot of great things going on, especially if you're interested in the connection with client stuff. I know I have his beloved box it's all really kind of a philosophy of connecting with client and facilitating that. Would really encourage you to check that out. Where can they check that out, Jesh?
jeshderox.com/beloved. They can
Okay.
actually listen to the speech I gave at WPPI about it if they want to learn more about it.
Okay. That's great. And then next time we have you on, we'll spend a little bit more time on Beloved, if that's okay, and also some of your other projects that you're in the middle of. So, all right, that's it for now. Take care. God bless you guys.